Yoshihiro Togashi created one of the most iconic shonen series with Yu Yu Hakusho. It is a series about death, about grief, and about growing up. It is a series that has some of my favorite villains. There are many great villains out there in different media. Anime has some of my favorite villains. One villainous pair that I sometimes feel is overlooked would be the Toguro Brothers, though I'm focusing more on the character of younger Toguro. The Toguro Brothers as characters are introduced in the manga in chapter 46, Springtime for Kuwabara, and they make an impression almost immediately. We can tell from how Tarukane talks about them that they are capable. They are also clearly stylish. However, they are also avid hobbyists. They enjoy bird watching.
We like watching birds. It's a pastime that brings us so much joy. Brother. Of course.
This scene is actually a great scene for establishing some key points as to who the Toguro Brothers are as characters. Notice how Toguro first tries to make Yukina cry. He cuts her face, and we have no idea how he managed to do so. But Yukina refuses to cry out. Toguro looks around at the birds, however, and immediately deduces something concerning Yukina's character, and the two immediately set out to exploit it. Younger Toguro then proceeds to do something interesting. He tells Yukina that she should learn how to cry as it will make her life easier. He doesn't need to pressure her further, however. As far as he is concerned, he has done his job. As Yusuke and Kuwabara proceed to trounce the security at the gate, we get another interesting insight into the character of the Toguro Brothers. These demons are jokes to Yusuke and Kuwabara, sure, but at this point we have seen that demons are no joke. And that more importantly, one thing demons tend to respect is strength. These demons are said to be capable of wiping out a team of special forces operators, and the Toguro Brothers are the people they listen to. However, it is this upcoming demonstration of the restraint of younger Toguro that I find fascinating. Toguro just painted the walls red with an animal that eats apex predators, and here he is not only complaining that he had to do so, but that he used more strength than necessary. The fight between the Toguro Brothers and Yusuke and Kuwabara is also a pretty solid fight. We get a great introduction to the powers of the two brothers, and we get another great insight into a strength of theirs: strategy. I not only speak of how they fight together as a team, but how they work around their opponent's thoughts. Remember, their goal is not to win this fight, but to convince Yusuke and Kuwabara that they won the fight, while in reality they are preparing for the Dark Tournament. As far as Yusuke and Kuwabara are concerned, they got out by the skin of their teeth through a combination of their strongest abilities and a little bit of off-the-wall thinking. To the Toguro Brothers, however, this is all part of a much larger ruse. Toguro even mentions that realistically throwing a fight is much harder than he thought it would be. The whole time, he has been working with Sakeo to take down Tarukane and make a whole bunch of money to help fund the Dark Tournament. What we can gather from what we have seen in just the first few episodes where they are introduced is staggering. Well, the Toguro Brothers are capable, cunning, and they have machinations that are not readily apparent at first. We can also see that younger Toguro has a sense of restraint, and that while he is willing to work with people he considers to be disgraceful, he is more than willing to swindle, if not outright kill said individuals when they no longer meet his needs, or if they simply are too disgusting for him to associate with anymore. Younger Toguro also has one of the most stone-cold reintroductions in anime. Yusuke and Keiko are out having fun when they find a building that has holes blown out of it. Yusuke then finds himself on edge, wondering what on earth is going on, as he feels that something is watching him, stalking him. It turns out something is stalking him as younger Toguro takes off his helmet and shows Yusuke that he is alive and well. Yusuke at first is flippant. He is used to the things he kills staying dead. Toguro, however, has different plans in mind, as he proceeds to show Yusuke just how outmatched he really is. So, do you remember how much strength Toguro said he used against Torikane's monster? He said he used 30%. Just to show off, he doubles that and levels a parking garage. What I think really sells it, though, is what he says to Yusuke. The Dark Tournament itself is an amazing arc. However, I'm not here to talk about the tournament itself as much as I want to talk about the brothers. The brothers make sparse appearances in the manga and in the anime. They also show up to provide, some interesting politicking when it comes to the tournament, and they make sure their presence is known. For one, demons love Team Toguro. Just about every demon is rooting for Team Toguro. Younger Toguro then finds himself confronting Genkai, and here we get another great insight into who Toguro is. He hates the idea of growing old. He hates the idea that strength will one day fail. We see that Genkai and Toguro were once romantically involved. We see that the two of them, 50 years before the tournament, were dealing with the issues that are the driving factors behind the fight. We see them dealing with the issue of growing old and about what it means to be strong. Genkai believing that Toguro isn't actually all that strong, and Toguro gives his rationale as well. Toguro reveals to Genkai that he has been using 45% of his strength, and that he realized that isn't respectful. He takes some of Genkai's strongest attacks, and he doesn't particularly care. Sure, he gets hurt pretty bad, but that isn't going to stop someone like Toguro. The fights with Team Urameshi versus Team Toguro are great fights. They truly are. One fight, however, that is not only great in and of itself, but for how it sets up the biggest difference between the two Toguro brothers, comes after the fight with Kuwabara and Elder Toguro. Kuwabara's method of using his spirit sword to flatten Elder Toguro is a great tactical move. After all, if you crush every organ in his body, he can't hope to regenerate, right? Well, that's what Kuwabara thought, and it didn't work. Elder Toguro then decides to put on a puppet show. Elder Toguro then proceeds to do something that differs a bit between the American dub and the original manga and the Japanese. Namely, why younger Toguro proceeds to beat Elder Toguro into a bloody pulp. In the manga, it's because Elder Toguro tries to cheat. Kuwabara won his fight. Elder Toguro technically loses his fight. Even though he's still alive, the count's already been done. He's been disqualified. Elder Toguro suggests to his brother that he use him as a sword or a shield, as they did when they first fought Yusuke. And younger Toguro beats him to a pulp. In the English dub, however, he beats Elder Toguro to a pulp. It seems more for insulting Genkai. But the whole cheating aspect, I feel, is also there. Personally, I feel that both are actually in character for younger Toguro. Younger Toguro, either way, tells his brother that even though he is a monster, he did not sell his honor. Elder Toguro lodges an interesting complaint, namely that they are brothers. The fight between Yusuke and younger Toguro is an incredible fight. The more younger Toguro powers up, the more monstrous he becomes. Demons in the audience get to live out one of Blue Oyster Cult's lyrics. My ears will melt, and then my eyes. Aside from the visual though, this scene solves a complaint that is often lodged at shonen manga. Namely, why don't they attack him while they are charging up? In this case, it's because you can't. Yusuke reveals later on in the fight that he's been wearing spirit cuffs to manage his energy, and that deep down he respected Toguro in a sense, in that Toguro was strong. Nobody could push him around. But he also calls Toguro out for his philosophy. Toguro states that to become a master, one must dedicate themselves entirely to something. He talks about how having connections weakens people. Yusuke, however, tells Toguro that he's full of crap. Toguro dies, believing that the only way he could be satisfied was by having his limits tested. He breaks apart, and with that, his fight against Yusuke is over. I believe, however, that throughout all of his interactions with Yusuke, younger Toguro is actually putting on an act. One that only makes sense when we fully understand his motives. It is after Toguro dies that we're given his backstory and his motivation, which puts everything he does into a greater context. It is fitting that the demon who killed his loved ones is named Kairin. The name means crushing forge. Toguro has been put under a pressure he never wanted, and tragically he breaks under that pressure. After winning the previous Dark Tournament 50 years ago, defeating Kairin, he and his brother make a decision that changed them forever. They turn themselves into demons. Elder Toguro throws away whatever semblance of honor he might have had as a human. Younger Toguro, however, finds that even with all the strength and youth that he has been granted, he still has this hole in his soul. Younger Toguro, it turns out, was projecting what he hated on himself onto Genkai during their fight. He hates that he was going to grow old, and that everything he built was going to fade away, and it did. He hates the fact that Genkai's student lived when all the students he trained did not. More than anything, though, he hates that Genkai kept her humanity and grew old with dignity when he broke down under the pressure. This becomes even more tragic as we learn that Genkai was working on the spirit wave because she wanted to save Toguro from his own madness. I find it interesting that Toguro does not want a demon to kill him. As far as he can concern himself, a demon is not a fitting way to die. He spent enough time as a demon. He wants to see if someone can stay human and kill him. He believes the monster that started his fall, he becomes the monster that started his fall, and wants to see if Yusuke will crumble under the same pressure. When Yusuke doesn't, he finds himself beaming with a strange pride, knowing that Yusuke has learned from him. Toguro then finds himself before Koenma, about to be judged and sentenced to his fate after death. And the English dub, the terror of the fate he wants for himself, is lessened somewhat by the word they choose and how they call it limbo. In the manga and Japanese dub, however, he makes his intentions clear. He has made hell for himself in his lifetime, and he hopes to experience the full brunt of hell now that he's dead. He approaches Genkai for the final time, and he tells her that he wishes things were different, and that he has made his bed and must now lie in it. Genkai sits there wondering, why did he choose to do this? I think Koenma is right in his assessment of younger Toguro. I think that he is indeed like an anthill, ready with things to bite. And I do think that he is a wounded man who allowed his heart to become dark and hard in order to avoid being vulnerable. To quote C.S. Lewis, "To love at all is to be vulnerable." The only place outside of heaven where you can be perfectly safe from all the dangers and perturbations of love is hell. What, however, of Elder Toguro? Who do I believe that he is? Well, in his own words, he is a cockroach with a brain. We see that he enjoys cheating and violence, and that he loves taking advantage of what he sees as flaws in others. I do not believe, however, that this is all there is to him. I like to believe that perhaps at one point, he was not as monstrous as we see him later. I like to think that perhaps he found himself driven to where he was at first by a sense of jealousy. I see how he rails at Genkai, calling her a whore, and how he says that his brother was driven insane by her. Perhaps when his younger brother went on his path to become a demon, he found himself going alongside his brother, driven by a sense of jealousy and a desire to stand out. Perhaps he was angry when Toguro hit him because he wanted to possess his brother as his. Perhaps, however, it was because he felt that it was wrong that someone who sold his soul alongside him and fought with him would turn against him. Whatever the case is, though, he winds up becoming a monster, enjoying cruelty and relishing in death, going as far as to work with Sensui later on. It is, however, his own abilities and his own desire to inflict pain, especially at those who he feels has slighted him, that cements his own damnation. Both brothers wind up with damnation as their ultimate fate, but the circumstances are different, and they tell us a lot about the two as characters. Younger Toguro has a hell that is locked from the inside. A hell that he created for himself long before he died. And long before he sold his soul and became a demon. A hell created from his own guilt, shame, arrogance, and ultimately his own heartbreak. Elder Toguro, on the other hand, finds himself in a situation where all of his power, all of his sadism, wind up feeding his own torment. Both are sad men, but one is driven by guilt and despair, and another by the desire to inflict pain and to cheat. So in the end, who were the Toguro brothers? They were two men who were sent into hell, and under unbearable pressure they turned themselves into monsters, hoping to ease the hole in their soul. One allowed themselves to become as much of a demon as the monster he once fought against. The other, however, wanted to be punished for falling into temptation, but he refused to allow himself to be destroyed under any terms but his own. In the end, they are monsters with a sense of almost nobility, but interestingly enough, they got there by being all too human.